Hey everyone, and welcome back to Chat Like a Native.
Hello. Great to be here.
Today, we're tackling something really interesting, those little sounds and words. You know, the ones we sometimes use when speaking English,
Oh, like, yeah, they creep in.
Exactly.
Huh.
Ever wondered why we say them? And maybe more importantly for you listening, how you can use them a bit less.
Right. Because, stick with us, mastering this, or at least getting a handle on it, can seriously boost your confidence.
Yeah, it really makes your English sound, well, more fluent, more impactful. You feel more understood.
Definitely. So we're going to explore what these little fillers, these hesitation markers, are all about.
And give you some super practical ways to maybe, minimize them in your own speaking.
Exactly. We'll dig into why these seemingly small utterances actually play a role in communication.
Look at how they might pop up differently depending on where you are.
And arm you with some concrete techniques, ways to speak more smoothly, with maybe a bit more assurance.
Okay, great. So let's get down to it then. What exactly are these verbal hiccups we're talking about?
Well, think of them as little signals. They're sounds we send while we're talking, those ums, unners, even short phrases like, or like.
Right. The things that don't really add meaning.
Precisely. They don't really carry meaning in themselves, but they tend to appear when we pause to think.
Okay, so you're thinking, but you don't want someone else to jump in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to hold on to your turn in the conversation. Hold the floor, so to speak.
Ah, okay. They're like little placeholders then.
Right.
But do they actually do anything useful? Because honestly, sometimes it just feels like I'm stumbling.
That's a great question. And what's fascinating is, yeah, they do serve a few communicative functions.
Really? Like what?
Well, for instance, that point about holding the floor. If you pause totally silently,
Yeah.
the person you're speaking with might think you've finished. They might jump in.
Right. Interrupt.
Yeah. But a little, can signal, hey, I'm just taking a moment here, gathering my thoughts. I'm going to continue.
Ah, okay. So it's a way of saying, hold on a sec, more's coming, but without actually, saying that.
Precisely. And another interesting aspect, sometimes they can indicate that we're about to say something a bit more complex.
Oh, how so?
Or maybe introduce a totally new idea. It's almost like a subtle heads up for the listener. Pay a little closer attention here.
Huh. Interesting. So it's not just about filling silence then. What else might be going on?
Well, our emotional state often plays a role too.
Like being nervous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If someone's feeling a bit nervous, maybe anxious, you might notice them using more of these filler words. They ramp up.
Yeah, I can see that.
But on the other hand, someone who feels very comfortable, very confident, they might use fewer. It's like those little ums can act as a bit of a safety valve, when we're feeling less secure.
That totally rings true for me. When I'm presenting or something and I'm a bit on edge, I definitely notice myself relying on them more.
It's very common.
Okay, so we know what they are, what they can kind of do. But why are they such a common part of how almost everyone speaks? What's the underlying reason?
This really gets to the heart of how our brains handle language in real time. It's about cognitive load.
Cognitive load?
Yeah. Trying to speak and at the very same time figure out what you want to say next. That puts a lot of demand on our cognitive resources. It's hard work.
Okay. So these little fillers, they give us just a tiny fraction of a second, milliseconds, really to plan our upcoming words.
So it's like a brief pause that doesn't feel like a full stop, a little mental buffer.
You could absolutely think of it that way. A temporary buffer is a good analogy. And like we touched on, our emotions also play a big part.
Right, the anxiety thing.
Yeah, anxiety or even excitement or just being tired. Any of those can increase our tendency to reach for a filler word. For someone feeling unsure, that or can feel like a little linguistic security blanket, something to hold on to. I can definitely relate to that feeling, just needing to fill the quiet somehow, even if what I'm saying doesn't add much substance right then.
And of course, the more we use them, the more they become ingrained. They turn into automatic habits.
Oh, right. Like biting your nails or something?
Kind of, yeah. And like any habit, once it's established, it takes conscious effort to break it. Our speech patterns just get used to inserting that, whenever there's a slight hesitation.
Okay, so it's a mix of managing our thinking process, maybe emotional factors, and then it can just become this automatic thing we do. That's really helpful to understand.
Yeah, covers a few bases.
No, you mentioned earlier that these filler words can sound different depending on where you are, like in different English-speaking places. Can you give us some examples?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, and are pretty widespread, almost universal in English.
Yeah.
You'll definitely hear other common ones. For instance, in American English, you'll frequently hear you know and like.
No, like.
Yeah, and it's often noted that younger speakers perhaps tend to use like quite a bit more. It almost seems to be taking on slightly different grammatical functions sometimes.
I do.
Well, maybe signaling a bit of hedging or politeness or just marking reported speech. It's evolving.
Huh. Like, yeah, I've definitely picked up on that. It can feel like it pops up constantly sometimes.
It can, yeah. Then if you go over to British English, you're maybe more likely to hear or
Right.
And well is also quite common as a sort of pause filler. Is a very typical British hesitation sound, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a sound I really associate with British speakers. What about somewhere like Australia or other places?
Well, in Australian English, you'll certainly hear pretty commonly.
So similar words.
The specific words might overlap quite a bit with British or American English, yeah. But the overall rhythm, the intonation, even the way these fillers are used within the flow of speech can have a slightly different feel. It's almost like each region has its own subtle way of navigating those little pauses in conversation, its own flavor.
That's so interesting. It's like each place has its own little verbal fingerprint for pausing.
In a way, yes. And it's definitely not just within English. Loads of other languages have their own versions.
Well, yeah.
For example, in French, you might hear In German, it's often Arabic has yani, which means something like I mean, but it's often used as a filler.
Wow.
And what's quite intriguing is that many of these, across different languages, often have a similar kind of neutral schwa-like vowel sound, that or sound.
Huh. So why is it useful for us, especially for English learners, to be aware of all these different filler words?
Well, for one thing, it can definitely help your listening comprehension.
Yeah.
If you're talking to people from various English-speaking backgrounds, recognizing their common fillers helps you follow along better.
Okay. That makes sense.
But maybe more importantly for you as someone learning English, understanding these variations can make you more aware of your own tendencies. What fillers do you use?
Right. And maybe make different choices.
Exactly. It allows you to make more informed choices about how you want to sound when you speak English.
Okay, great. So now we have a better handle on what these fillers are, why we use them, and how they can differ across regions and languages. Let's move on to the really practical stuff. What can we actually do to use them less?
Right. This is where we get into the strategies. And honestly, one of the most powerful, though maybe counterintuitive techniques is learning to embrace the silent pause.
The silent pause. Ooh, that sounds a little intimidating. Won't I just sound like I've, forgotten what I wanted to say or lost my train of thought?
It can feel that way initially, absolutely. We're often quite uncomfortable with silence, but the reality is a brief moment of silence can actually be much more effective.
More effective than...
Often, yes.
Yeah.
It can make you appear more thoughtful, more confident than filling that space with or We tend to overestimate how long those silences actually feel to the listener.
So instead of automatically reaching for that, when I pause to think, I should just stop for a second.
Exactly. Just allow the silence. And here's a little mental trick you can try. When you feel that urge to use a filler, practice silently counting 1 Mississippi in your head, just one. You might be surprised how natural and self-assured that short pause actually sounds to other people.
1 Mississippi. Okay, I can definitely try to incorporate that. That feels doable. What are some other techniques we can use?
Well, preparation is really key.
Right.
Especially if you're giving a presentation or speaking in a more formal setting.
How does preparation help specifically with fillers?
If you could break down what you want to say into shorter, kind of well-planned phrases or chunks, you'll naturally find yourself hesitating less often in awkward places. Knowing roughly the next segment of what you want to convey can significantly reduce those unplanned, filler-filled pauses.
That makes perfect sense. If I have a clearer idea of where my sentence or my point is going, I'm less likely to get stuck searching for words and reaching for an
Precisely.
Yeah.
And another thing that helps with structure is using signpost words or phrases. Things like firstly, secondly, next. Another point is or finally. Using these provides a clearer structure to your speech, which helps both you, the speaker, stay on track, and it helps your listener follow along more easily. And that clarity, that structure, can, in turn, reduce those moments where you might otherwise hesitate and use a filler.
Those are great, really actionable tips. Preparation and structure. Now, how can we become more aware of when we're actually using these fillers? Because sometimes I don't even notice I'm doing it.
Yeah, self-awareness is absolutely crucial. It's the first step. And a very effective way to develop this is simply to record yourself speaking.
Oh, dear. Listen back to myself.
I know. It can feel a bit cringy at first. But whether it's just audio on your phone or even video, record yourself during practice sessions. Or even just talking about your day.
Okay. And then what?
Then listen back specifically for the fillers. Maybe even make a little tally mark every time you hear an Just becoming conscious of how often you actually use them is a huge first step.
Right. You can't fix what you don't know you're doing. That makes sense, even if it sounds a little exposing. But I can see how it would be really helpful.
It really is. The insights you gain are invaluable. Another powerful approach, maybe a bit less isolating, is to get feedback from someone else.
Like a language partner.
Exactly. Enlist the help of an accountability partner. Ask a friend who's also learning, or maybe a native speaker friend or tutor who's willing to help.
And what do they do?
Ask them to listen to you speak, maybe for 5 or 10 minutes, and just gently signal, maybe raise a finger, or make a small note whenever they hear you use one of your common filler words.
Ooh, real-time feedback.
Yeah, that immediate feedback can really accelerate the process of breaking the habit. It brings it to your conscious attention right in the moment.
Having someone else point it out, yeah, that could definitely be a game changer, even if it feels a bit awkward at first.
It's all part of the learning journey. And one more technique to consider, which is slightly different, is focusing on your overall vocal delivery.
How does my voice affect fillers?
Well, consciously varying your pitch, your volume, and even your speaking speed, your vocal variety, can actually keep your listeners more engaged.
Okay.
And interestingly, it can also lessen your own urge to fill silences. When your voice has more natural dynamism, more musicality, it holds attention more effectively, and you might feel less need to plug every tiny gap.
Ah, so it's not just about the words I'm using or not using, but also about the music of my voice, making the delivery itself more engaging.
Exactly. It all works together.
Okay, these are some fantastic core techniques. Embracing the pause, preparing, getting feedback, working on vocal variety. Do you have any specific exercises our listeners could try, like, right away?
I do. Yeah, here are a few practical exercises you can try. First one, let's call it the filler awareness drill. Pick a topic, any topic you're reasonably comfortable with. Maybe describe your favorite hobby or your commute. Speak about it for just 1 minute without any prep. Record yourself.
Right.
Then, listen back carefully and count every single filler word you used. Get a baseline number.
Okay, got my number. Then what?
Then, for your next attempt, pick a different simple topic. And this time, consciously try to reduce that filler count by, say, 50%. Set a clear target.
Wow, okay. Setting a specific reduction target like 50% sounds really motivating. Challenging, but motivating.
It gives you something concrete to aim for. Another helpful exercise is paused reading.
Paused reading.
Yeah. Find a short paragraph, maybe from a news article, a blog post, a book. Read it aloud.
Okay.
But this time, make a deliberate, conscious effort to pause silently at all the punctuation marks, commas, periods, question marks.
And the key is silent pause.
Exactly. Consciously avoid using any filler words during those natural pauses indicated by the punctuation, just silence. As you get more comfortable with those silent beats, you can gradually try increasing your reading speed, but still maintaining those clean, silent pauses. It really helps you get comfortable with brief moments of silence within your speech flow.
That sounds like a great way to retrain that impulse, to get used to those little gaps without feeling the need to immediately fill them with sound.
Precisely. And one more, a third exercise is what I call word bank practice.
Word bank?
Yeah. Choose maybe 5 new vocabulary words that you're actively trying to learn and incorporate into your speaking.
Okay, got my 5 words.
For each of those 5 words, create, let's say, 3 original sentences using the word correctly in context.
Right.
Then, practice saying those sentences, all 15 of them, smoothly. Focus on clear delivery without any filler words creeping in. Record yourself doing this.
Ah, okay.
Listen back. Track your progress over time as you practice. This helps you focus specifically on clear, fluent delivery while you're also reinforcing new vocabulary.
So it's about being very intentional with those new words and practicing clear, filler-free delivery at the same time. That's a really smart way to combine different practice goals.
Hopefully useful.
Definitely. Now, these exercises sound great for focused practice, but what about longer-term strategies? Because like you said, this isn't something that's going to change overnight, right? It's a habit.
That's absolutely correct. Consistency is key. So thinking longer term, incorporating things like mindfulness or even just simple breathing exercises into your daily routine can be surprisingly helpful.
How does mindfulness help with ums and ups?
Well, these practices can help lower your general level of anxiety. And as we've discussed, anxiety is often a trigger for increased filler word usage, especially in potentially stressful speaking situations.
That makes sense. If I'm feeling generally more calm and present, I'm probably less likely to feel the need for those verbal crutches when I speak.
Exactly that. Also, don't underestimate the power of structured practice environments. Consider exploring public speaking clubs.
Like Toastmasters.
Groups like Toastmasters, yes, or similar local groups, or even online communities. They provide a supportive and structured place where you can get regular practice speaking in front of others.
And get feedback specifically on this stuff.
Yes, you usually get constructive feedback specifically on aspects like your fluency, your delivery, and yes, your use of disfluencies or filler words.
I've heard really positive things about those kinds of groups. It sounds like having a dedicated space, a sort of gym for your speaking skills.
That's a great way to put it, precisely. And finally, just make a habit of continuous self-monitoring, but in a low-pressure way.
Meaning?
Maybe every few weeks or once a month, just casually record yourself in a more natural setting, perhaps talking to a friend or during an informal presentation at work or school.
Okay.
Listen back briefly. Just check in on your filler word usage over time. Are you noticing a difference? Are old habits creeping back? It just helps you ensure you're making sustained progress and staying aware of your speaking patterns long term.
So it really is an ongoing journey. Awareness, consistent practice with exercises, maybe some group support, and then continuous refinement through self-monitoring. That's really valuable to keep in mind. It's not a one-time fix.
Definitely not. So maybe to wrap things up, the key takeaway here isn't about trying to eliminate all natural pauses or sound like some kind of, perfectly scripted robot.
Right. That would sound weird.
It really would. It's much more about consciously replacing those less helpful habits, the excessive ums and amatiale, with more confident, potentially powerful silent pauses, and maybe more well-thought-out phrasing that comes from taking that tiny extra moment.
Right. So it's about becoming a more intentional, more effective communicator in English, not about sounding unnatural or losing your personality.
Beautifully put, exactly. And the advice is always, start small, don't try to fix everything at once. Maybe just focus on becoming more aware of one particular filler word that you tend to overuse.
Just pick one, or.
Yeah, pick your main offender and just work on noticing it, maybe replacing it with a tiny pause. Acknowledge and, celebrate your progress along the way.
Yeah.
Every little improvement really does make a significant difference in the long run.
This has been incredibly helpful. Seriously, it's given me a lot to think about, not just for our listeners learning English, but for my own speaking habits too. I'm definitely going to try that one Mississippi trick.
Excellent. And on that note, perhaps here's a final thought for you and for everyone listening to consider as you go about your week.
Oh.
How might consciously choosing to incorporate more deliberate pauses into your English speaking, not just reducing fillers, but actively using silence, how might that change not only how you sound, but perhaps also influence how you actually process your thoughts, how you formulate your ideas when you're communicating in English?
So pausing might change my thinking too.
Maybe. Pay closer attention to your own speaking patterns and those moments of silence or hesitation in the coming days. See what insights you gain about your own mind working in English.
Wow. That's a really fascinating, provocative question to end on, something to definitely mull over. Thank you so much for this deep dive into filler words. It was brilliant.
My pleasure entirely.
And thank you all for tuning in. Until our next chat on Chat Like a Native.